Welcome back to Easy Chinese Cooking. Everybody's been asking about my banana bread. I know it's not Chinese, but I'm going to show you how to make it. So we always tend to do banana bread when we've got 2 or 3 bananas which are nearing end of life. Many people will say, oh, you should use fresh bananas, but that's actually not the best way of doing it. When you use fresh bananas, it just isn't as moist. So when you've got these end of life bananas that are literally going dark, they are just that bit softer and you get a much more moist bread out of it afterwards. We usually use 2, you can use 3, but we're going to share this one up and give it to the dog or something. So we're going to use 2. Switching to the GoPro for first person view, the bananas we are going to crush up in a bowl, but not just yet. The ingredients rundown is as follows. We need plain flour, sugar, although we don't usually put sugar in things, it's kind of a must to go in this, just because it works better. Baking powder, although you won't need much of that. Bicarb of soda, again, you won't need much of that. A dash of milk, again, you won't need much of that. Butter, ideally unsalted butter, you'll need about a tablespoon full of that. 1 egg. We're going to use a pinch of salt as well. And as for the secret ingredients, I'm going to use a splash of vanilla bean extract, a spoon or 2 of instant coffee. You can use decaf if you want to, and traditional 100% unsweetened cocoa Hershey's powder, or Hershey's cocoa powder. This gives it a beautifully silky chocolate flavor without adding any more sugar than we're already going to add. If you don't want the sugar in, by the way, there are other ways of sweetening it. You can get artificial sweetener, either in the powder form or the stevia form, but the stevia type things for me usually add some kind of minty flavor that I don't like. So on the rare occasion that I add sugar to something, this is one of them. So as for the process, what we're going to do first is obviously skin the bananas, and they go in the bowl, and we're going to just smash them up with a fork. And again, when they are older bananas getting on in life, they're easier to smash up because they're just a little bit softer. And the more you smash this up, the better, because it will be smoother, and you want a smooth paste when you're making the bread, or rather when the bread maker's making the bread, because why do it yourself when a machine does it better? Now, one part of the wet ingredients that I always almost forget is the butter, because the butter must be melted to go in. So I get the gas on first, and a generous spoon of butter goes in. You don't need any more than that, but it does need to be melted. Ideally slowly, otherwise it starts to burn, but slowly melt the butter. Just when it's about to finish, I turn the gas off because there's clearly enough heat to melt the remaining butter, and it just helps to prevent it from burning. And there you are. Now, as soon as this is done, it has to go straight in with the bananas. You can probably see I'm using my left hand because I switch. I'm somewhat ambidextrous because when I grew up, I was forced to use my right hand for everything, for writing, for eating at the dinner table at school, but I preferred left-handedness. I would eat left-handed until they forced me to eat right-handed. So you'll probably see me switch hands quite a lot sometimes. You see, like now, my instinct now is to switch to the other hand, but sometimes I just switch between the two, which I thought you might find an interesting trivia. So I mix the butter up with the banana to make sure that it stays in kind of a liquid form. If you keep it moving, it will stay liquid form. Next liquid thing we've got is the egg, which we are going to whisk up. Always wash my hands after using an egg. So whisk the egg, and the egg goes in with the initial wet ingredients being the bananas and the butter. Final wet ingredients are a splash of milk and a splash of vanilla bean extract. Again, give the wet mixture stir around just to mix all of those together. Now for the dry ingredients. Now, strictly speaking, you're supposed to put these in a separate bowl, weigh them by themselves, mix them together, then mix them into this. I don't bother. I never bother. This works just as well. In fact, I think it works better this way. I get one of these very inexpensive scales, which will measure the weight of whatever is on it when you turn it on and cancel it out so that it goes to 0. So you can put in the weight that you want, but it doesn't count the weight of the bowl, so it's discounted the weight of the bowl. So I typically start by adding the flour. We are going for just over 100 grams of flour and just under 100 grams of sugar. So I do it slowly because it's more difficult to take it out if you go over. So 97, 103. The strict recipe is about 106, so I go just over 100 and I get as close to 106 as I can. That will do. I zero it out again. Now I'm going to add the sugar. Like I say, sugar is optional. We almost never add sugar to anything deliberately, but if you want it to taste as good as possible for your guests and so on to serve with cream, we want about 95 grams of sugar. Or if someone's got a particularly sweet tooth, you can do a bit more, but not too much more because it sort of interferes with the way that it cooks. So that's the sugar. You can see it's quite a lot of sugar in there, but you probably won't be eating very much of it if you're sharing it up. Now, as for the bicarb of soda and baking powder, usually a bit more of the bicarb works better for me, so I go for about 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon of the bicarb soda, 1/3 teaspoon of baking powder, and then for my secret ingredients, which is the instant coffee. Now, I would ordinarily never drink instant coffee. 1 or 2 spoons of that. I usually like a tiny bit more. And then the Hershey's cocoa powder. Again, 1 to 2 spoons of this powder, maybe 1.5 is just about right. And last but not least, 1 sprinkling of salt. So a good quality salt, just a sprinkling of salt. Then you can take the scales away, and I literally just blend all of this together. As I say, lots of people say you should mix all the dry ingredients first, which is probably right. That's probably what you should do. I don't profess to be a professional chef. I just do what works. I do what I like. So all the keyboard warriors, is your opportunity in the comment section now to tell me how wrong I am to just mix all this together. And for me to counter that argument with, it works and it tastes good, so that's why I do it. So type away and I'll read those later. So again, the more you mix this up and the smoother it gets, the better the overall bread is going to be. But that's really it. And I use, like I say, I use a bread maker because it times it, it gets it to the right temperature, it mixes it thoroughly and properly. Literally pour this in here. I use these scrapers because they really make it easy to get every last bit out.
A few moments later.
Never play peekaboo by opening a lid, but you can look through the glass.